Big voice on the Jet Airways crisis. The MOS Aviation Jayant Sinha spoke to my colleague Ruchi Bhatia about the ongoing crisis in Jet Airways and if the spectre of widespread job losses was worrying the minister. Here's an excerpt.
We want to make sure that the very, very capable and talented employees of Jet Airways are absorbed in the aviation ecosystem as quickly as possible, and that they have a very good and soft landing. So we are very, very focused on ensuring good employment prospects for them. The good news in all of this, Ruchi, is the fact that the industry is growing. There's tremendous long-term demand for aviation services, and so I'm very sure that all the talented and capable employees of Jet Airways will find a very good home, whether at Jet Airways or in other companies as well. And of course, this is how markets work. What happens is that resources, people move from less competitive companies to more competitive companies. And ultimately, what we have to do in India is we have to build a globally competitive economy where the most competitive, most efficient companies are the ones that thrive and succeed.
But some of these employees have not been paid for the last 4 months. I mean, why is the government keeping a hands-off approach in this matter?
Ruchi, it's very, very clear that governments intervene in the economy only when there are systemic risks. This is a well-accepted consensus around the world. And you have to distinguish between ILFS, which would have led to contagion and a systemic set of issues, and Jet Airways, which has operated in a very, very smooth manner within the existing legal and regulatory framework, and where there are no systemic risks. For us, handling the aviation system, the important thing is to ensure that this market disruption moves through the system in a smooth manner, that all the assets and all the people are absorbed efficiently and well without too much friction within the existing legal and regulatory framework, and that's what we've done. Capacity has come in quite quickly to absorb the Jet Airways capacity that's gone out of the system. Fares have remained relatively stable, and all the passenger inconvenience, refunds, cancellations, we are proceeding on that to ensure that passengers are not inconvenienced in any way. So markets do work, and we've got to let markets work. When governments operate, they have to establish a legal and regulatory framework, and then within that the various players have to conduct themselves.
But the gap is pretty glaring. I mean, I know what you're saying, but the kind of jobs that have been lost are about 20,000 versus a SpiceJet or some other airlines that will be either picking up planes or cabin crew or other stuff, which, there's a huge gap in there.
No, Ruchi, I think you're taking a very short-term view, right? There is a transition process that happens, and during the transition process, of course, there are challenges that have to be done, but whatever people's dues are, I think will have to be met in some fashion or the other. But give it some time, and once you give it some time, you'll find that everything will be very smoothly absorbed. I'll take you back to Kingfisher. After Kingfisher shut down, everybody got absorbed into various other airlines, and they continue to have great careers. So just give it some time, and you'll find that the process of absorption will happen quite smoothly.
There are people who died as well, Mr. Sinha. There are people who could not pay their EMIs.
I feel terrible. I feel very sorry and terrible for that. And of course, the goal is to be able to ensure that everybody is protected and everybody is safe. But we live in an open market economy, Ruchi, and it is important for each individual to think about the fact that they have to themselves be able to have appropriate protection, buffers and so on, because yes, companies do go in and out of business, and that is a fact of an open market economy. That's how open economies work. Companies succeed, some companies don't succeed, and we all have to recognize that.
Let me also ask you then, because the reason that I'm asking you this question, the banks first said, and in fact SBI was leading the consortium, they said they'll be pumping in 1,500 crore rupees, but that money never really came in. Why did the banks develop cold feet? I'm sure, because the government owns a large part of these PSU banks. What really changed for them?
It's very clear for the banks that they have to make decisions in their commercial interest and in using their commercial judgment. As you remember, when I was in the finance ministry, we had a very important conclave in Pune, which was back in 2015. And we made it very clear at that point, and exactly the Jayant Sangam that we had in Pune, and the Honorable Finance Minister and the Honorable Prime Minister made it very clear that in our government, banks would be free to do what they think was right in their commercial commercial interest, and they are responsible to their stakeholders, to their depositors, and they should do what they think is commercially the right thing to do. And that's exactly what they're doing as far as Jet Airways is concerned. And we have to let them do that, because that's how we create accountability in the system. That's how we reduce the price of risk in the system. So government needs to establish a legal and regulatory framework, and then various players have to conduct themselves accordingly. Otherwise, what happens is, if there is arbitrary intervention by the authorities, you drive up the price of risk, you create very open and arbitrary decision making, and then it's very difficult for people to understand how they need to conduct themselves.
You know, since you said that there will be people who will be absorbed in other airlines and there is no need to worry, things will become better from here on, even if Jet Airways comes back. But precedent says that once an airline is shut, it never comes back. Look at what happened to Kingfisher or Paramount or many more other airlines as well. Because there is no such precedent, what are the chances that Jet would perhaps fly?
I think that's a question you have to ask the banks, you have to ask those who are bidding for Jet Airways. They have to take into account the value in Jet Airways right now, you know, how much they have to bid for it and so on, and so let the bank-led resolution process unfold. Our job as regulators is to ensure that markets operate well, that there is no arbitrariness in the rules-driven process and the rules-driven environment that we have set up, and that's what we are engaged in.
All right, that is Jayant Sinha saying that a regulatory framework needs to be established, and the priority as of now is to save jobs when it comes to the jet crisis.